Billionaire CEO goes undercover, falls for black junior employee. Instantly, hello, wonderful souls. Welcome to a journey filled with love, hope, and transformation. We are so grateful to have you here as you step into a story that will touch your heart, inspire your spirit, and remind you of the power of human connection. As you watch, know that this story isn't just for you, it's for all of us. It's a testament to love that transcends boundaries, strength in the face of adversity, and the resilience of the human heart. Thank you for being here to share in this moment, and we hope it resonates with you in ways that stay with you long after the screen fades to black. If this story has moved you in any way, we invite you to take that feeling and make it your own. Don't just watch, engage, share, and spread the love. Every story has the power to change lives, and your voice can be the spark that ignites someone else's journey. Like, share, and subscribe, and join us in creating a world where love, respect, and understanding know no bounds. Together, we can make a difference, because love is the one thing that connects us all, and it's time we let it lead us forward. Ethan Caldwell sat in his grand office on the 50th floor of Caldwell Tower, staring out at the sprawling city skyline. His life, by most standards, was a dream. At just 30, he had built one of the most successful enterprises in the country. His name graced the covers of business magazines, and his every move was chronicled by the media. But as he gazed at the world below, he felt an emptiness that even his billions couldn't fill. Ethan wasn't blind to the whispers that surrounded him. People envying his power, pandering to his wealth, and rarely seeing the man behind the empire. Even his closest allies seemed to treat him more like a walking bank account than a human being. This wasn't the life he wanted anymore. He yearned for authenticity, for connection, and for a better understanding of the people who kept his company alive, the everyday employees who toiled behind the scenes. That's when the idea struck him. Ethan decided to go undercover at one of his company's branches. Disguised as an ordinary employee, he could see the true workings of his organization without the polished facades everyone wore around him. It wasn't a decision made lightly, but it felt necessary. He wanted to see the world through fresh eyes, away from the constraints of his billionaire title. With meticulous planning, Ethan transformed into Ethan James. He traded his tailored suits and designer watches for a pair of jeans, a plain button-up shirt, and scuffed sneakers. His sleek, swept-back hair was ruffled into a casual style, and the ever-present air of authority he carried was replaced with humility and curiosity. The transition was jarring, but it exhilarated him. When the day finally arrived, Ethan walked into the modest building of Caldwell Enterprises' local branch. The smell of fresh coffee mingled with the soft hum of conversations. The office was bustling yet grounded, a stark contrast to the intimidating grandeur of his corporate headquarters. He introduced himself to the receptionist with a nervous smile, feeling out of place in a way he hadn't felt in years. "Ethan James," he said, extending his hand. "I'm the new hire for the customer service team." The receptionist welcomed him warmly, directing him to the department manager. It was surreal for Ethan to sit in a small cubicle instead of his expansive office. The humbling experience was exactly what he needed. That's when he first noticed her. Across the room, a young woman with radiant brown skin and a luminous smile leaned over her desk, helping a colleague. Her laughter floated through the air, light and melodic, breaking the monotony of the office buzz. Her presence was magnetic. Everyone seemed naturally drawn to her. Ethan found himself captivated, not just by her beauty, but by the warmth she exuded. Her name was Amara Johnson. She wore her natural curls pinned back, and her style was effortlessly professional, but it was her confidence and genuine kindness that stood out the most. Ethan observed how she treated everyone with respect, from her fellow employees to the janitorial staff. She wasn't just doing her job, she was uplifting those around her. Ethan was drawn to her in a way he hadn't expected. Her light seemed to illuminate the corners of the room, and he couldn't help but feel his heart skip a beat every time her laugh echoed through the office. For the first time in years, Ethan felt nervous. The kind of nervousness that made him wonder if she'd even notice him. Later that day, as the team gathered for a quick meeting, Amara introduced herself to him. "You must be the new guy," she said with a kind smile, her eyes locking with his. "Welcome to the team. I'm Amara. If you need help settling in, just let me know." Ethan felt his breath catch. Her voice was warm, her tone sincere. She wasn't just being polite, she truly meant it. He shook her hand, noticing how her touch lingered just long enough to make his heart race. "Thanks, Amara," he replied, hoping his nervousness didn't show. "I appreciate it." The day ended with Ethan reflecting on the whirlwind of emotions he'd experienced. He had come here to understand his employees and his company, but instead he found himself utterly intrigued by Amara. She wasn't just another employee, she was someone who seemed to carry the kind of authenticity he'd been searching for. Ethan had no idea what lay ahead, but one thing was certain: meeting Amara had already begun to reshape his perspective. This undercover mission was meant to reconnect him with his company, but it seemed it was about to reconnect him with something even deeper, his own humanity. Little did Ethan know, this was only the beginning of a journey that would challenge his views, break down barriers, and ultimately change his life forever. Amara Johnson wasn't the type to shy away from hard work or challenges. Her journey to Caldwell Enterprises had been anything but easy. Growing up in an underserved neighborhood, she had learned early on that nothing in life was handed to her. She had faced countless obstacles, limited resources, systemic prejudice, and a constant underestimation of her abilities. But Amara's resilience was her greatest weapon. She graduated at the top of her class, balancing part-time jobs with rigorous studies. She carried herself with pride, a quiet strength radiating from her. When she landed the job at Caldwell Enterprises, it felt like a hard-won victory. Yet she knew she wasn't done proving herself. She poured her heart into her work, determined to climb the ladder and create opportunities for others like her. Amara had always been the kind of person who left an impression on people, but she had no idea that one ordinary day at work would change her life forever. That morning, Ethan was still adjusting to his new role as Ethan James. He was navigating the unfamiliar environment of a customer service team, far removed from the luxury of his executive office. The anonymity was freeing, yet unnerving. For the first time in years, no one catered to him. No one fawned over his every word, and no one recognized him as the powerful CEO he truly was. It was both humbling and exhilarating, but it also left him feeling a bit out of place. The day began with a brief orientation meeting where Amara was among the employees introducing themselves. As she spoke about her role, Ethan couldn't help but notice her confidence. Her voice carried a mix of warmth and authority that was rare to find. She wasn't just another employee, she was someone who seemed to care deeply about her work and the people around her. When she finally turned her gaze to him, he felt as if the air had shifted. "Welcome to the team, Ethan," she said, her eyes meeting his. There was no pretense, no overly polite formality, just genuine kindness. Her smile was effortless, and Ethan found himself momentarily lost in the depth of her expressive brown eyes. "Thank you," he managed to reply, cursing himself internally for the stammer. Amara nodded with a smile and turned back to the group, but Ethan couldn't shake the feeling that their paths were meant to cross. Later that day, their first real interaction unfolded in the most unexpected place, the break room. Ethan had wandered in, hoping for a quick caffeine fix to keep up appearances, but the office coffee machine was proving to be more complicated than he'd anticipated. As he fumbled with the buttons, muttering under his breath, a soft laugh startled him. "Need some help?" a familiar voice asked. Ethan turned to find Amara standing a few feet away, a playful grin on her face. She was holding her own mug, her posture relaxed and confident. Yeah," Ethan admitted, feeling his cheeks heat up. "I think this machine is smarter than I am." Amara chuckled, stepping closer. "It's tricky at first, but once you get the hang of it, it's not so bad." She moved beside him, her fingers deftly pressing the buttons with practiced ease. As she explained the process, her tone was light and patient, as if she enjoyed helping. Ethan found himself mesmerized by her presence. She was close enough that he could catch the faint scent of her perfume, something floral and sweet. When their hands brushed briefly as she handed him the mug, he felt a jolt of electricity that took him by surprise. "There you go," Amara said, her smile brightening the room. "Crisis averted." "Thanks," Ethan replied, his voice softer than usual. He wasn't used to feeling this disarmed. "You make it look easy," she tilted her head playfully. "That's because I've been here long enough to know all the tricks. You'll get the hang of it soon." Ethan nodded, his heart still racing. For someone who had mastered boardroom negotiations and billion-dollar deals, this moment felt strangely significant. It wasn't just her beauty that captivated him. It was her energy, her unassuming confidence, and the way she treated him like anyone else. "By the way," she added, leaning slightly against the counter, "what brings you to Caldwell? You seem different from most people who start here." Ethan hesitated, choosing his words carefully. "I wanted a change, I guess. A chance to start fresh and see things from a new perspective." Amara's eyes softened. "That's a good reason. Sometimes stepping out of your comfort zone is the best way to grow." Her words struck a chord with Ethan. He was struck by how easily she understood a sentiment he hadn't even fully admitted to himself. Amara had a way of making him feel seen, even though she barely knew him. The moment was interrupted by a colleague calling Amara's name from across the room. She excused herself with a polite smile, leaving Ethan standing there with his coffee and a racing heart. As she walked away, Ethan couldn't help but smile to himself. That brief interaction had left a mark on him. It wasn't just the spark he felt when their hands brushed. It was the way she carried herself with strength and grace, the way she made the mundane seem meaningful. Ethan realized he wasn't just curious about her. He was captivated, and as he watched her blend back into the bustling office, he felt something he hadn't felt in years: hope. Little did Amara know, her kindness and laughter had begun to crack the walls Ethan had built around his heart. And little did Ethan know, this first encounter was just the beginning of a connection that would challenge them both in ways they could never imagine. As weeks turned into months, Ethan and Amara began to spend more time together, their connection deepening with each passing day. It started with small moments, a shared laugh during meetings, casual chats in the break room, or walking out together after long days at work. What surprised Ethan most wasn't just how easily he could talk to Amara, but how much he wanted to hear what she had to say. Amara's stories were windows into a world Ethan had rarely seen. She spoke openly about her childhood, growing up in a neighborhood that struggled with poverty and systemic inequality. Her parents had worked tirelessly to provide for their family, instilling in Amara a fierce sense of resilience and a belief that education was her path to a better life. There were days, Amara admitted one afternoon during their lunch break, when I wasn't sure if I'd make it through college. Between working 2 jobs and taking care of my siblings, it felt impossible sometimes. She paused, her eyes distant, but I knew I couldn't give up. I wanted more for myself and for the people I love. Ethan listened intently, his admiration for her growing with every word. He had always believed himself to be hard-working, but Amara's journey humbled him. Her struggles weren't just obstacles, they were battles she had fought and won with grit and determination. "Do you ever feel like people underestimate you?" Ethan asked one day, his voice laced with curiosity. Amara let out a soft laugh, though there was a trace of sadness in her expression. "All the time," she said. "As a black woman in corporate America, it's almost a given. But I've learned not to let it bother me. My work speaks for itself. And when people finally see that, it's the best kind of victory." Her words struck a chord with Ethan. She wasn't bitter or jaded. She was driven and unapologetically herself. He admired her authenticity, a quality he realized was rare in his own world, where so many people wore masks to please others. In turn, Ethan found himself opening up to Amara in ways he hadn't with anyone before. Over late-night coffee runs and quiet moments in the office, he began to share pieces of his own story, carefully edited, of course, to protect his identity. He spoke about his childhood, growing up in a wealthy family where expectations were as heavy as the Caldwell name itself. He shared how his parents had groomed him to take over the family business, leaving little room for him to discover who he was outside of their legacy. "It's funny," Ethan mused one evening as they walked out of the office together. "People think having everything means you've got it all figured out, but sometimes it just feels empty." Amara glanced at him, her brow furrowed with concern. "Empty how?" Ethan hesitated, choosing his words carefully. "Like everyone around you is more interested in what you have than who you are. It's hard to know who to trust." Amara nodded, her gaze softening. "I get that. Trust isn't easy, especially when people have their own agendas. But I think, deep down, everyone just wants to be seen for who they really are." Her words hung in the air, resonating deeply with Ethan. He realized that Amara was doing exactly what she described, seeing him for who he was, not for what he could offer. She didn't know he was a billionaire, but she treated him with kindness and respect regardless. For the first time in years, Ethan felt like he could be himself without any pretense. As they grew closer, Amara began sharing her dreams with Ethan. "I want to climb the corporate ladder," she admitted one day, her eyes bright with determination. "Not just for me, but for the people who come after me. I want to show them that it's possible, that you can break through the barriers no matter where you come from." Ethan felt a swell of pride as he listened. Amara wasn't just ambitious, she was driven by a purpose larger than herself. She wanted to make a difference, to be a beacon of hope for those who had been told they couldn't succeed. "You will," Ethan said softly, his voice filled with conviction. "You're one of the most capable people I've ever met. Anyone who underestimates you doesn't know what they're missing." Amara smiled, a faint blush coloring her cheeks. "Thanks, Ethan. That means a lot coming from you." Their bond grew stronger with every shared moment, every conversation that peeled back another layer of their hearts. Ethan found himself looking forward to every interaction with Amara, savoring the way she made him feel grounded and understood. For Amara, Ethan was a breath of fresh air. He didn't come across as the typical colleague. His humility and genuine interest in her life set him apart. She appreciated the way he listened without judgment and encouraged her to dream bigger. What neither of them realized was how deeply they were beginning to impact each other's lives. Amara's resilience and determination inspired Ethan to see his company and the world through a different lens. Meanwhile, Ethan's quiet vulnerability reminded Amara that even those who seemed to have it all could be searching for something more. They were two people from vastly different worlds, but in their shared moments, those differences faded away. What remained was a connection built on trust, respect, and a growing affection that neither could deny. Ethan often found himself wondering what Amara would think if she knew the truth about him. Would she still see him the same way? Would she understand why he had chosen to hide his identity? The thought both excited and terrified him. For now, though, he was content to enjoy the bond they were building, knowing that it was rooted in something real, something that went beyond wealth or status. And as their friendship deepened, Ethan began to feel something he hadn't in years: hope, not just for himself, but for the possibility of something truly extraordinary. The invitation to the charity gala came as a surprise. Ethan had approached Amara cautiously, aware that such an event might feel out of place for her. They were walking out of the office together after a long day when he brought it up. "There's a charity event this weekend," he said, his tone casual but his heart pounding. "It's hosted by a friend of mine. I thought it might be something you'd enjoy. It's for a good cause." Amara raised an eyebrow, clearly intrigued but hesitant. "A charity event? You mean one of those fancy galas where everyone's wearing designer clothes and sipping champagne?" Ethan chuckled nervously. "Something like that. But it's more than that. It's about raising awareness and funds for education initiatives in underserved communities. I know that's something close to your heart." Her expression softened at his words, but doubt lingered in her eyes. "I don't know, Ethan. Those kinds of places, I'm not sure I'd fit in." Ethan stopped walking, turning to face her. "You belong anywhere, Amara. Don't ever let anyone make you feel otherwise. Besides, I'll be there, and I promise you'll be amazing." After a moment's pause, Amara smiled. "Okay, but don't blame me if I trip in heels." When Saturday night arrived, Ethan could hardly contain his nerves. He had spent the day preparing for the event, but his thoughts were consumed by Amara. He couldn't shake the image of her walking into the grand ballroom, her presence lighting up the space. He had arranged for a car to pick her up, wanting to ensure she felt taken care of. When the car pulled up to the venue and Amara stepped out, Ethan's breath caught in his throat. She was radiant. Amara wore an emerald green gown that hugged her figure with effortless grace, the color complementing her radiant brown skin. Her hair was styled in soft waves that framed her face, and a pair of simple earrings glimmered as she moved. But it wasn't just her appearance that stunned Ethan. It was the confidence in her stride, the way she carried herself with elegance and poise. "Wow," he managed to say as she approached. "You look incredible." Amara laughed softly, a hint of a blush on her cheeks. "You clean up pretty well yourself, Mr. James." Ethan grinned, extending his arm. "Shall we?" The ballroom was a sea of crystal chandeliers, soft music, and elegantly dressed attendees. Amara's initial nervousness melted away as Ethan stayed close by her side, introducing her to a few people and making her feel at ease. To Ethan's delight, Amara thrived in the environment. When a conversation turned to the challenges of educational inequality, a topic close to her heart, she spoke with passion and eloquence, captivating everyone at the table. "It's not just about access to education," she said, her voice steady and confident. "It's about creating opportunities that allow communities to break the cycle of poverty. Education is the foundation, but it needs to be supported by real resources, mentorship, and systemic change." The room fell silent, her words leaving a profound impact. Ethan watched her with a mixture of awe and pride, realizing once again how extraordinary she was. After dinner, the lights dimmed, and the music shifted to a slow, romantic melody. Ethan stood, extending his hand to Amara. "Care to dance?" he asked, his voice soft. Amara hesitated for a moment, then placed her hand in his. "I'd love to." On the dance floor, under the glow of twinkling lights, Ethan and Amara moved in perfect harmony. It felt as though the rest of the world had faded away, leaving just the two of them in their own little universe. "You're full of surprises, you know that?" Amara said, looking up at him. Ethan raised an eyebrow. "How so?" "You're not like most people I've met," she admitted. "You're kind, thoughtful, and you actually listen. It's rare." Ethan's heart swelled at her words. "I could say the same about you, Amara. You're extraordinary." She laughed softly, shaking her head. "I'm just me." "And that's enough," Ethan said, his voice sincere. As they swayed to the music, Ethan felt a surge of emotions he hadn't experienced in years. It wasn't just attraction. He was deeply, irrevocably in love. But with that realization came a wave of fear. He knew he couldn't keep his secret from her forever. Amara deserved the truth, and he hated the thought of deceiving her. But he also feared what might happen when she found out who he really was. Would she still trust him? Would she believe his feelings were genuine? Ethan tightened his grip on her hand, silently promising himself that he would tell her soon. For now, he allowed himself to savor the moment, holding her close as they danced beneath the lights. As the evening came to a close, Amara turned to Ethan, her eyes sparkling with gratitude. "Thank you for inviting me," she said softly. "I was nervous, but tonight was magical." Ethan smiled, his heart full. "The magic was all you, Amara." They stood outside, under the starry sky, the night air cool against their skin. For a moment neither of them spoke, the unspoken feelings between them hanging in the air. Ethan wanted to tell her everything right then and there, but the words caught in his throat. Instead, he reached for her hand, his touch lingering. "Amara," he began, his voice faltering, "there's something I need to tell you." But before he could continue, a colleague approached, interrupting the moment. Amara gave him a curious look, but didn't press. As she stepped into the car that would take her home, Ethan watched her go, his heart heavy with both love and uncertainty. He knew the time was coming when he'd have to lay everything on the line, but for now, he held on to the hope that their connection was strong enough to weather the truth. What Ethan didn't realize was that Amara had already begun to sense that he was hiding something. And while she trusted him, she couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to Ethan James than met the eye. It was a sunny afternoon when everything came crashing down. Amara had been scrolling through her phone during her lunch break, absent-mindedly reading news articles. One headline caught her attention. "Ethan Caldwell, the billionaire CEO reshaping corporate America." Her eyes widened as she clicked on the link. And there it was, a photo of Ethan Caldwell, impeccably dressed in a tailored suit, with the unmistakable face of the man she knew as Ethan James. Her heart sank, a mix of confusion and disbelief washing over her. For a moment, she simply stared at the screen, her mind racing. Ethan Caldwell. The Ethan she had grown so close to, the one who had shared her struggles and listened to her dreams, was actually a billionaire CEO. Questions swirled in her mind. Why had he lied? Was their connection real? Or was she just another pawn in some elaborate game? By the time she returned to the office, Amara was a bundle of nerves. She couldn't ignore the betrayal she felt, but she needed answers. When Ethan walked into the break room a little later, smiling warmly as usual, she felt her chest tighten. "Ethan," she said, her voice unsteady. He turned to her, his smile faltering when he saw the look in her eyes. "Amara, what's wrong?" Without a word, she held up her phone, the article glaring back at him, the color drained from his face as he realized what she had discovered. "You're Ethan Caldwell," she said, her voice trembling with a mix of anger and hurt. "The CEO of this company. You've been lying to me this whole time." "Amara, please let me explain," Ethan began, stepping closer. "How could you lie to me about who you are?" she demanded, her voice rising. Tears brimmed in her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. "I trusted you. I thought we had something real, and now I find out you've been pretending to be someone else." Ethan's heart broke at the pain in her voice. He had known this moment would come, but he hadn't prepared for how much it would hurt to see her like this. "I never meant to deceive you," he said earnestly. "When I decided to go undercover, it wasn't about you. It was about understanding my company, the people who make it what it is. I wanted to see the world through their eyes, to know the struggles they face every day." Amara crossed her arms, her gaze sharp. "And what about me, Ethan? Was I just part of your little experiment?" "No," Ethan said firmly, his voice thick with emotion. "Meeting you changed everything. You weren't part of any plan, Amara. From the moment I met you, I knew you were special. You've shown me what it means to be resilient, to care deeply about others, and to fight for what you believe in." Amara's expression softened slightly, but the hurt in her eyes remained. "You should have told me the truth. You had so many chances, Ethan. Why didn't you trust me enough to be honest?" Ethan ran a hand through his hair, his frustration with himself evident. "I was scared. I didn't want my title or my wealth to come between us. I wanted you to know me, not the CEO, not the billionaire, just me. Ethan James was the closest I could come to being the person I've always wanted to be." For a moment, neither of them spoke. Amara looked away, her mind racing as she tried to process everything he had said. She could see the sincerity in his eyes, the regret etched into his features, but the pain of his deception still lingered. "I need time," she finally said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I don't know how to feel right now. I respect your reasons, but I can't just ignore the fact that you lied to me." Ethan nodded, his shoulders slumping. "Take all the time you need, Amara. I'll wait as long as it takes. Just please know that everything I feel for you is real. You mean more to me than anything." Amara didn't respond. She turned and walked away, leaving Ethan standing alone, his heart heavy with regret. The days that followed were difficult for both of them. Amara wrestled with her emotions, torn between the depth of her feelings for Ethan and the betrayal she felt. She couldn't deny the connection they had shared, the way he had listened to her, encouraged her, and treated her with respect. But the lie loomed large, casting a shadow over everything. Ethan, on the other hand, threw himself into his work, though his heart wasn't in it. He knew he couldn't rush Amara's forgiveness, but the thought of losing her was almost unbearable. One evening, Amara found herself rereading their old text messages, replaying memories of their time together. Despite her hurt, she couldn't deny the sincerity in Ethan's words and actions. He had been there for her, not as a billionaire CEO, but as a friend and confidant. Amara sighed, her heart heavy. Maybe there's more to him than the lie, she thought. She decided she needed to hear him out one last time. Not as an employee confronting her boss, but as a woman trying to understand the man she had fallen for. The next day, she texted Ethan, "Can we talk?" His reply came almost immediately. "Anytime, anywhere. Just say the word." Amara stared at her phone, her fingers hovering over the keys. She knew the conversation ahead wouldn't be easy, but she also knew it was necessary for both of them. Amara had always been a fighter. From her childhood in a struggling neighborhood to her journey into corporate America, she had faced every challenge head-on. The revelation of Ethan's true identity had shaken her deeply, but it didn't break her. Instead, it ignited a fire within her, a determination to prove her worth, not just to Ethan, but to herself. In the weeks following their confrontation, Amara poured herself into her work with renewed focus. She tackled every project with unmatched tenacity, her ideas innovative and her execution flawless. Her colleagues noticed the shift, and so did her supervisors. Slowly but surely, Amara began climbing the corporate ladder, earning promotions and accolades. Ethan watched from the sidelines, both in admiration and regret. He had always known Amara was exceptional, but seeing her rise through the company reinforced just how remarkable she truly was. While he longed to rebuild their relationship, he understood that his focus needed to be on proving himself worthy of her trust. One day, during a meeting with the executive team, Ethan proposed a bold new initiative. "I've been reflecting on the company's values and culture," he began, his tone earnest. "It's time we make meaningful changes to ensure Caldwell Enterprises is a place where everyone, regardless of their background, feels valued and empowered." He outlined a series of initiatives aimed at fostering diversity and inclusion within the organization. Mentorship programs for underrepresented employees, scholarships for students from disadvantaged communities, and mandatory training for leadership on unconscious bias. As he spoke, his gaze briefly flickered to Amara, who was seated at the back of the room. Their eyes met, and for a fleeting moment she saw the sincerity in his expression. When the meeting adjourned, Amara approached him. "I didn't expect that," she said, her voice measured. Ethan turned to her, his expression hopeful. "It's something I should have done a long time ago. You've shown me what true leadership looks like, Amara. I'm just trying to follow your example." Months later, Caldwell Enterprises hosted a company-wide event to celebrate its employees and unveil the new diversity and inclusion programs. It was a grand affair, attended by staff from all levels and backgrounds. Ethan stood on the stage, addressing the crowd. His speech was heartfelt, filled with anecdotes and a deep commitment to fostering change. But then he paused, his gaze scanning the room until it landed on Amara. "There's someone here who has inspired me more than I can put into words," he began, his voice steady but thick with emotion. "Someone who embodies resilience, courage, and the kind of integrity that makes the world a better place." The room fell silent as all eyes turned to Amara, who sat near the front, her expression a mix of surprise and humility. "Amara Johnson," Ethan continued, "you've not only excelled in your role, but have also shown me the importance of authenticity and strength. You've taught me what it means to lead with heart, and for that I will always be grateful." He took a deep breath, his next words directed not just at her, but at everyone in the room. "I owe you an apology," he said, his voice breaking slightly, "for not being honest with you from the start, for underestimating the strength of your character and the depth of your trust. You've shown me that true connection isn't built on titles or wealth, but on honesty and respect. And I'm sorry for the pain my deception caused." Amara felt tears prick her eyes as the audience erupted into applause. Ethan's words were raw and genuine, and she could see the transformation in him, not just as a CEO, but as a person. Later that evening, as the event wound down, Ethan found Amara standing near a balcony, gazing out at the city lights. He approached cautiously, his hands in his pockets. "Amara," he said softly, "thank you for listening to me tonight. I meant every word." She turned to face him, her expression unreadable. "I could see that," she said, "and I appreciate it." They stood in silence for a moment, the weight of their shared history hanging in the air. Finally, Amara spoke again. "You've changed, Ethan," she said, her voice steady, "and I respect the effort you've put into making things right, not just with me, but with the company." Ethan's heart lifted at her words. "It's because of you, Amara. You've made me want to be better." Amara looked at him, her gaze softening. "I'm proud of what we've both accomplished, but trust. It takes time to rebuild." Ethan nodded, understanding the truth in her words. "I'm willing to wait," he said, "for as long as it takes." Amara smiled faintly, a glimmer of hope in her eyes. "We'll see, Ethan. For now, let's just keep moving forward." As she walked away, Ethan felt a sense of peace. He knew there were no guarantees, but he also knew that he was willing to do whatever it took to earn her trust again. Amara's strength and grace had inspired him to become a better leader and a better man, and for that he would always be grateful. And while their story was far from over, both of them knew that the journey ahead would be guided by honesty, respect, and a shared commitment to building something truly meaningful, together or apart. The road to reconciliation was long, but it was one Amara and Ethan were willing to walk together. Over time, Amara saw the sincerity in Ethan's actions. He had proven that his transformation wasn't just for show, it was real. He had not only changed the way he led his company, but had also learned to become a better, more compassionate man. He had humbled himself before her, and now Amara saw a side of him she hadn't seen before, a man who had learned from his mistakes and was determined to grow. As for Amara, she realized that love, like success, wasn't just about perfection, it was about growth, effort, and understanding. She had been hurt, yes, but she had also seen the person Ethan had become, and she saw a love that had the potential to transcend any challenge. Her heart had healed, not through erasing the past, but through acknowledging the pain and accepting the growth that had followed it. The day Ethan proposed to Amara was simple but perfect. It was in the same break room where they had first met, the place where everything began. Ethan had carefully planned the moment, ensuring that it would be intimate, meaningful, and most of all, genuine. As Amara walked into the break room, she saw him standing there, waiting. His hands trembled slightly, but his gaze was filled with warmth and love. "Amara," he began, his voice soft but steady, "I've spent so much of my life searching for something I didn't even realize I was missing. What I've learned through everything we've been through is that the only thing that truly matters is love, real, unconditional love. And there is no one else in the world I'd rather spend my life with than you." Amara's breath caught in her throat as he kneeled before her, presenting a simple yet elegant ring. It wasn't a grand gesture or an extravagant display. It was just a symbol of everything they had been through and everything they had become. "Amara, will you marry me?" Tears filled her eyes as she looked down at him. This wasn't just a proposal, it was the culmination of everything they had been through. The heartbreak, the healing, the growth. It was the moment that proved that love could conquer all. "Yes," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "Yes, Ethan, I'll marry you." The break room, which had once been a place of uncertainty, now became the birthplace of their future. As they embraced, The world outside faded away. It was just the two of them, two people who had come together against all odds to find love and build something lasting. Their wedding was a beautiful celebration of love that transcended everything society said it should be. It wasn't a wedding that fit into the confines of tradition or expectation. It was a wedding that was entirely their own. Ethan and Amara chose to marry in a way that reflected their unique journey, simple, meaningful, and full of love. The ceremony was held at a community center where Amara had volunteered during her early days in the company. It was a humble, intimate affair, surrounded by their closest friends, family, and colleagues, people who had supported them through the highs and lows of their relationship. Amara wore a modest, elegant white dress, her beauty radiating not just from the gown, but from the confidence and strength that shone in her eyes. Ethan, by her side, looked every bit the part of a loving husband-to-be, his eyes full of admiration and respect for the woman who had inspired him to become a better man. The vows they exchanged weren't just promises of love. They were commitments to stand by each other, to continue growing, and to be better together. They spoke of forgiveness, of understanding, and of fighting for what truly mattered. There was no grand declaration of societal ideals, just two people who had found each other and knew without a doubt that they were meant to be together. Their wedding day was more than just a union of two people. It was a declaration to the world that love could defy the boundaries that society often tried to impose. It was a celebration of the power of love to break down walls, to heal wounds, and to create something beautiful. Amara's journey, however, didn't stop there. As Ethan's wife, and now a well-respected leader in the company, she used her newfound platform to become a voice for those who often went unheard. She dedicated herself to advocating for marginalized communities, using her position to push for change, not just within Caldwell Enterprises, but across the corporate world. She worked tirelessly to ensure that underrepresented groups had the opportunities they deserved to succeed. Amara became an inspiration to countless young women, especially women of color, who had faced similar challenges in their careers and personal lives. She showed them that their worth wasn't defined by the color of their skin or the circumstances they were born into. It was defined by their strength, their determination, and their refusal to accept anything less than the best. In her speeches, interviews, and public appearances, Amara consistently championed equality and inclusion. "Your potential is not limited by your background or where you come from," she would say, her voice resonating with power. "It's defined by your heart, your character, and your drive to make the world a better place. Never let anyone tell you that you can't achieve greatness." Amara and Ethan's love story became a beacon of hope to those who felt they didn't fit into society's narrow expectations. Their relationship sent a clear message. True love doesn't look at skin color, class, or any of the artificial barriers that society tries to put in place. Love is about connection, trust, and the willingness to see each other for who we truly are. Amara's rise from a junior employee to a celebrated leader wasn't just a testament to her hard work. It was a powerful statement that greatness isn't defined by privilege, but by character, determination, and resilience. Together, Amara and Ethan proved that love knows no boundaries. It is a force that transcends race, class, and societal labels. And perhaps most importantly, they reminded the world that true greatness is not about wealth or status, but about who you are as a person. In a society too often defined by prejudice and division, their story was a reminder that love, when given the space to flourish, can change the world. It's time for society to dismantle the prejudices that keep people apart and to begin uplifting individuals based on their merit, their humanity, and the love they have to give. Message to society. Love knows no boundaries. In a world that is often divided by lines that separate us, love has the incredible power to transcend every barrier. It sees beyond the color of one's skin, the language they speak, or the background they come from. Love embraces the uniqueness of each person, recognizing that at the core, we all share the same humanity. Love knows no limits, no prejudices, and no restrictions. It is a force that has the ability to heal, to bind, and to create stronger, more compassionate communities. It is time for us to break down the walls of prejudice that have long stood between us. These walls are built upon fear and ignorance, yet they crumble when faced with the truth that we are all equal, regardless of our differences. We cannot continue to allow hatred and division to define us. Every single person, regardless of their race, religion, gender, or status, has a unique beauty that should be celebrated, not feared. The time to rise above the limitations of prejudice is now. We must come together and acknowledge that our diversity is our strength, not a weakness. The beauty in each individual lies in their story, their dreams, their struggles, and their triumphs. It is in the kindness of a stranger, the wisdom of an elder, the creativity of a child, and the strength of those who fight for justice. There is beauty in the way we love, in the way we support each other, and in the way we stand up for what is right. We must see this beauty in one another, not with judgment, but with an open heart that seeks understanding. Let us uplift one another, not tear each other down. Let us be the voices of encouragement, the hands that help when someone falls, and the hearts that provide warmth when the world feels cold. We are not here to compete with one another, but to support one another as we navigate this life. The success of one person should be a success for all of us, for we are all interconnected in ways that go beyond what we can see. By lifting each other up, we create an environment where everyone has the opportunity to flourish. Let us celebrate each other's differences, for it is in our diversity that we find the richness of life. Each culture, each belief, each tradition adds something beautiful to the tapestry of humanity. When we come together, not despite our differences but because of them, we create something far more powerful than what we could ever achieve individually. It is in our differences that we find opportunities to grow, learn, and become better versions of ourselves. It's time for us to change the narrative. We cannot allow race, class, or status to define who we are or who we can become. Success should not be measured by the amount of money in one's bank account or the privileges they were born into. Success should be measured by kindness, by the integrity with which we live our lives, and by the positive impact we have on others. A person's worth should never be determined by the superficial standards set by society, but by the love they give, the respect they show, and the difference they make. As we embark on this journey of change, let us remember that it all starts with us. It starts with the way we treat others, the choices we make, and the values we uphold. Let us be the change we wish to see in the world. When we show love and kindness, we set an example for others to follow. Our actions, no matter how small, have the power to spark a ripple of change that spreads across the world. We are all deserving of love, of respect, and of opportunity. We are all deserving of a world where we are valued for who we are, not what we have or what we look like. So, let us come together as one. Let us build a world where love and merit, not race or status, define success. Let us create a society where we celebrate each other's humanity, where we see beyond the surface and embrace the depth of each person's soul. Together, we can build a future that is not defined by what divides us, but by what unites us. We have the power to create a society where kindness reigns, where love conquers all, and where every individual is given the chance to reach their fullest potential. It's time to break down the walls of prejudice, celebrate the beauty of our differences, and build a world where every person is valued, loved, and respected. Let us be the generation that chooses love over hate, compassion over judgment, and unity over division. The time for change is now. Let us come together, united in our shared humanity, and create a future where love knows no boundaries.